Welcome back to the sharpest college football podcast from LeanTossup Sports. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. If you missed it in part one of this week's podcast, Robert predicted that Georgia is going 8-4. After a little bit of time to think about that, are you sticking with that prediction?
It was about 10 minutes ago in real time.
Okay.
I'm not calling for 8-4. I think we'll go but I think there is definitely at least one, maybe two, maybe stretch 3 losses on the schedule. I think it could. If you gave me like under 10.5 at like plus 160, I'd take that. And I like the under 11.5. But yeah, this Georgia team, I don't think. I believe they're still the favorites to win the national championship game, and I do not think they should be. I think they're a perfectly fine top 25 team, but they are not the best team.
In between part one and part two, we were talking, and or maybe it was during part one. 11.5 was the preseason number. You said it's still the number for their season win total, although the under is now juiced, and I don't think it was juiced that hard before the season. Correct?
No, it was not. Let me just call up. So right now, college football playoff, Georgia plus 260 to win the national championship game. That's kind of nuts. Georgia to make the playoffs, minus 225. That's also a bit too rich. And Georgia regular season wins under 11.5, minus 160. So I have a question about that. If you're penciling in, basically the market is saying it's likely Georgia will lose one game. What game do they lose and then also still win the SEC East and then also go to the SEC championship game and then also, are they losing to Georgia Tech? Who are they losing to that's going to allow them to also win the SEC East?
Yeah, you've got to lose to the team that's going to lose too, which is
Florida?
Interesting. There's some... There we go. Actually, you know what? That's not a bad scenario. Rivalry game, it could happen. I bet there's a little bit of Florida win probability in that number, but yeah, those numbers just don't align to me either. Speaking of numbers that might or might not align, you ready to look at some of my metrics here?
Yeah.
All right. My top 20 offenses. As we can see, we get another week into the season. Last week was the first week of the model. All of the entire top 20 was above an offensive rating of 7. A little more normalization with another data point for most of these teams. No real surprises. I think, Washington State being number 7 is a little bit high, but they are what they are. Michigan, after a couple of good outings against some pretty reputable defenses, and Rutgers and Nebraska's up in the top 10. Duke's still in the top 20 at number 13. Missouri at number 14. Brady Cook, freed from the shackles of my guy Bush Hamden. In part one, we talked about Maryland. I've got them 15th overall in offense, and a, quote, elite in terms of a team you'd like to look to bet over. And Kentucky, who plays Georgia. Coming up, they're above 7 as well, and next to in there Liberty and Purdue. Welcome to the Liberty is a Menace podcast, and Purdue, I was a little surprised, and they held up again another week. Forgot to ask our buddy Isaiah if he's buying that. And then rounding out the top 20, North Carolina, and the loser of week 5 in part 1, UCF. What grabs your attention at this top 20?
Yeah, Purdue being there is actually kind of interesting. Purdue has not been an amazing team all year, but they've not been a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Them being top 20 is definitely a little odd to me, but I figured they'd be somewhere around there. Maybe not top 20, but somewhere around there. Again, interesting game this week with them against Iowa. Purdue offense pretty good. Iowa's defense, of course, pretty good as well. But then Purdue's defense, not horrible. Iowa's defense, horrible. So I think edge would go to Purdue there.
Iowa's offense, I think you meant to say.
Sorry, Iowa's offense, yes. Sorry. Purdue's defense, not horrible. Iowa's offense, horrible. So I think advantage goes to Purdue there, so we'll have to see with that one. I'd say Notre Dame, 13 points 2 weeks ago, 21 points this week. Interesting that they're still so high, but again, that's because of, I believe, Duke and Ohio State are so highly rated, both on defense as well. So that does cancel that out a bit as well. interesting again, 10 and 11, Texas, Oklahoma. Guess who
Yeah.
plays this week? Noon Eastern. I'm excited for that game.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good game. And as well, interesting LSU there. LSU's just been shelling people the last couple of weeks. Last week it didn't work, but they've been continuing to just shell people though. And yeah, Ole Miss up there as well. Ole Miss is a very interesting one where it's just like I can't figure out if this team is good or they've gotten lucky in a couple of games, or because the thing is, it's like on one hand, I'm like, okay, they're pretty good, right? They beat LSU, they've handled pretty much everybody else on their schedule, but then they lost to Alabama, which Alabama is not even remotely on your top 20 list. They're not even on my top 20. They're approaching my top 25, but they're not even there yet. That's probably a bit too harsh on them, but like also we can be a bit harsh on them too. So, I think.
There's an interesting little thing coming up later about Alabama that absolutely threw me on my butt when I was getting this together. So stay tuned. Going back to something I brought up in part 1 too. Interestingly, and this is why I think it's wide open. My highest rated team in the Big Ten West is Wisconsin by just a couple points over Nebraska and Purdue. But by far the best offense in the West is Purdue. That's why I think this is wide open. This could just be like who can muster up some kind of offense in the Big Ten West. I wouldn't count out Purdue. I wouldn't count out anybody except for Minnesota because they just seem to have just stopped enjoying playing football for some reason. And Northwestern because Northwestern basically killed their season before it started. All right, top 20 defenses. Is this just a horrible looking mascot? I mean, this looks like a leftover from a thrift shop, the Penn State mascot. My gosh.
I will say that when you go back to when because you've shown the Wisconsin slide there for 2 weeks now because it's the top offense. That Husky's adorable. It's adorable. It's got a little bandana. That's awesome. That's adorable. But yeah, first of all, look at that guy. It's a good boy. But this is weird. I don't know what. Yeah, this is not adorable. To be fair, I don't know exactly what a Nittany lion is. I assume that's what this is. Is it like a mountain lion? Is it? It's not really.
It's a local mountain lion.
Local,
obviously, local to Happy Valley, which I guess shops at thrift shops.
But again, top defense though for Penn State, not particularly surprising. But their mascot is a little surprising.
Yeah, some of the same names here. Fresno State up to number 7. Good for them. Liberty number 9. Liberty is a menace. It's a theme. Iowa just behind Liberty, a little surprising there. Texas, as we pointed out, Texas and Oklahoma top 11 in offense. Texas, Oklahoma top 11 in defense as well. That's going to be some high quality ball. Interesting that although it makes sense, Oklahoma's ahead since Venables is a defensive coach. But man, they were horrible on defense last season. So good job for him or by him. Tennessee, like we said last week, surprisingly doing well on defense. Nebraska, this is why my model liked them against Michigan. My model still enjoys their defense for some reason. A&M solid. Rutgers still hanging in there despite that Michigan game. Clemson back in the top 22, which doesn't surprise me. I knew that they'd be good on defense. Before the season, I thought their troubles would be on offense, which they kind of have fixed, but not really. They have fixed intermittently. I kind of maybe liken their offense to the USC defense, that they're good until they're not, and then they're really not. All of these really make sense to me. I'm just surprised at how high Fresno and Liberty are. What grabs your attention on this list?
Yeah, Liberty again. This is a Conference USA team being 9th overall, and then also in the top 20 offense. Very terrifying combination there for a G5 team. Again, Liberty on Friday night play Sam Houston State, so Liberty's defense a very unmovable object versus Sam Houston State's offense, which is a very stoppable force. So alt spreads on that one. Outside of that, Ohio State's defense being ahead of Georgia's kind of crazy, I would say. And again, Iowa falling down there. And again, this is what we've said before, right? This is the problem with Iowa, is the fact that We said, okay, their defense was one of the best defenses last year. Their offense was bad. The theory and behind the whole Brian Ferentz 25 points per game was like, well, if the defense stays the same and we can normalize the offense to league average, therefore we could be a top 20, we could be like a top 10 team, which that's not how that works because you can't keep up the same level of defense year over year. You don't just get a top 10 defense because I don't know, God gifts it to you or something. That's not how this works. You like sometimes you lose players to the draft. Sometimes players don't play to the same level. Again, Michigan is where is Michigan on this list? They're not even on this list.
No,
They were one of the top
Paul.
defenses last year. And
Yeah,
again, apparently deciding to just completely destroy Nebraska this week, but which Nebraska's on this list too. But no, like you can't. Like this is the thing. It's not consistently to just have the same. You can't just keep the same level of defense year over year as you eventually you have attrition to the NFL, and that's going to stop you there. And I think that's a big problem with that whole theory of the case. And now Iowa is okay, a good defense, but not a top defense. And for Iowa to be like Iowa could now Iowa keeps chugging away and winning some of these games. Okay, I think they're still what? I think they're 4-1, right? I think their only loss was to Penn State so far. But this week they've got Purdue. That could be another loss. I think someone on Twitter had said like, oh well, with Iowa, if Iowa goes like 10-2 or 11-1, everybody keeps their jobs. And like, well, I don't think they're gonna get to 10 wins. I think this could be like an 8-5, 8-5, 7-6, like something around there. This team could kind of slip back to 500 as you start playing actual teams that are in the Big Ten and not like MAC teams and Utah State. So, and again, you beat Michigan State, which is a team that fired their head coach and has still not recovered from that apparently. So yeah, I'm a little iffy on that Iowa team as well. Texas A&M being up there is interesting as well, because this team is like sneakily okay, is sneakily good. They're not bad, but the fact that Miami crushed them means that Miami is actually that good, and Miami's also on this as well. Again,
yeah.
the one team that has not gotten nearly the amount of attention it should have so far this year is Miami. Miami is actually a very, very good team. I don't know how good they are exactly, but like based on your rankings here and based on my rankings, they're better than Florida State. And that's kind of terrifying because I have a bunch of Florida State futures, so I should
Hmm.
probably level those out at some point. Um, but but yeah, and the other one more point I'll make on this before I go is that Oregon at number 3. I can't. Where are they on the top offenses? They're up there on the top offenses as well, right?
Yeah, let me see here. You're number 8. Yeah.
Yeah, number 8. Eight top offense again, less than USC and less than Washington, but in the same ballpark as them, and then having a far better defense than either Washington or USC. You have the tools to score against a very movable defense, against the very movable Washington and USC defenses, and you can actually stop Caleb Williams, and you can actually stop Michael Penix, looking like I don't even know what Michael Penix just looks unbeatable in some of those games. If you can actually stop them, you can win the Pac-12. And then if you go undefeated in the Pac-12 play, one, Bo Nix could win the Heisman, and two, you could win the national championship game. And this is the thing, because I'm now that we're in the middle of the season, I'm starting to look at Heisman futures. I'm starting to look at national championship futures, playoff futures, and it's like I don't like Caleb Williams still looks like the best player. He's now moved on to be the favorite. What are the Heisman numbers here? It's just a side Heisman right here. Caleb Williams plus 170, Michael Penix Jr. Plus 400, Quinn Ewers plus 800. Do not bet that. Bo Nix plus 800. Jordan Travis 14-1, Gabriel 18-1, Jalen Daniels 20-1, Hartman 25, McCarthy 25, Tyler Van Dyke 28-1. The thing is, if Oregon can beat Washington and USC, Bo Nix wins the Heisman, I think. And they win the Pac-12. They win the Heisman and they go to the College World Playoff. I think that makes sense. I think they could. I think Oregon probably beats one of them. I don't know if they beat both of them, but if they beat both of them, they win the Bo Nix wins the Heisman. That's my guess. Is that what you think as well?
I think if he beats USC, definitely. There might be kind of before the season, I was very skeptical about Caleb's chances, but you know, my concern was he has to beat last year's numbers, and he's way ahead of last year's numbers, where it might be kind of like a match play elimination head to head thing, where whoever loses that game is basically not going to, they'll probably be a finalist, but they're not going to win the trophy. So I would say that he needs to beat USC. Actually, boy, but then I don't know. Yeah, if he loses to Washington, Washington beats USC. I don't know. That gets really complicated. But if I just kind of dumb it down a little bit and just say, okay, if you kind of just say there's a loose correlation, are you kind of getting plus 800 on Oregon winning those two games? It's got to be a better price than money line parlay between those two.
Well, the other thing is what I've already played was Oregon over 10.5 wins plus 120. I really like that. I think they beat one of them. I think they actually have both at home, I believe. And what is Oregon?
They're at Washington.
They're at Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing
well,
that
then
would concern me. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, even then, that's still. That means they win like one of them, and right.
Yeah. I wouldn't overlook Washington State. I'm irrationally high on them. That's the other thing that I'd be a little concerned about too.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Yeah. Okay. One thing too about Miami, and this is just maybe the last gasp of desperation of somebody who has a ticket on Miami to win, I think, less than 8 games. I need to see Mario not screw things up in a close game. Texas A&M was a runaway game. Great for him. Let's see if it's close against a Florida State, for example. If he can avoid doing Mario things. I'll just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one point I want to make too about Clemson. Clemson is like sneakily good. They're not bad. I think their defense at least is pretty good. Their offense still has a lot of question marks. But I think maybe after they lost to Duke and after they kept Florida State pretty close. And I think they're actually sneakily a pretty good team. And I think, although they've now been eliminated from the college football playoff, and actually I think probably I think they've probably been eliminated from the ACC as well.
Yeah.
Functionally, if not, I mean, there's probably a path, but it's some weird path where but whatever. I think in an alternate, well, in next year, I think there is a non-zero chance they could be like an at-large team maybe, because I think there's an argument where Florida State would be in it, and then Duke could potentially be an at-large as well, and then Clemson could be like 12th or something. And I think it is, again, extremely, and I'm going to say this probably every week, it's extremely unfortunate we only have 4 teams this year, not 12 teams, because of hotel rooms or some stupid thing like that. Because, again, 12 teams would be extremely helpful with getting USC, Oregon, and Washington into the college football playoff. Florida State, potentially North Carolina, potentially Miami. I'm starting to run through projections as to who goes to the college football playoff and who doesn't, and I'm starting to get to a point where I don't think the SEC makes it. I kind of think the Pac-12. Well, because here's the thing, right? Because if you look at it, if someone goes undefeated through the Pac-12, whether or not that's Oregon, Washington, or USC, I think they could beat themselves up, but I think you take a one-loss Pac-12 team, a one-loss Pac-12 champion. The Big Ten, if Penn State goes undefeated, you're not excluding Penn State, and Penn State should be able to take care of business. Because Penn State's rivalry game is who? Who's Penn State's rivalry game? Nothing serious. Their rivalry game isn't anybody serious, right?
The Michigan State is their rival.
Okay, that's nothing then, because you have to worry about a final. So basically, they get it's not a bye, but it's an easier game ahead of the conference championship game. So if they beat Ohio State and Michigan, which I think they would, then they're undefeated. Then if it's an undefeated Florida State, an undefeated Miami, or an undefeated North Carolina, they're going to college football playoff. You're looking at a one-loss Bama at least, potentially a 2-loss LSU already. If either of those teams win, it's either a 1 or 2-loss SEC champion. Georgia seems poised for another loss or two. Okay, can Kentucky go undefeated the rest of the way? Well, they still got Tennessee, and then they've got whoever comes out of the West. Tennessee already has a loss. Florida already has a loss. If Kentucky trips up, which they probably will at some point, then if Georgia loses a game in the regular season, and unless Georgia goes undefeated, at which point then they'll keep them in there. But I think Georgia doesn't look that good now. I'm starting to see a path where the SEC doesn't make the college football playoff.
Interesting.
Now I think I said that. I think you're starting to see it too now.
Yeah. Yeah, because your highest rated SEC team is actually Kentucky at 4th, which is interesting. Yeah, you don't have Georgia. You have Georgia number 15, I guess. So that is looks like it.
Just kind of,
yeah.
To be honest, if you're just looking at game stats, that's probably where they should be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's going to come down to whom does Georgia lose, and then do they get an invite when they don't even make their conference championship game?
It also comes down to the Pac-12. If someone goes undefeated through the regular season, how clean is the Pac-12? If it's okay, and then again, the best part is then if it's undefeated team versus one loss team that only lost to the team that is undefeated. If they lose that game, then the one loss team that beat there's a chance that how would that work then? It'd be if Oregon beat USC and then USC beat Washington and then then they okay. There's probably some sort of weird system where it'd be if one team if basically two teams had one loss and one team was undefeated and then the one team played Oregon beat them, and the one loss team could potentially go to the college football playoff over an SEC team but it's going to be weird though, right? I have no there's a lot of question marks here, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how this shakes out, but there's going to be chaos here. And then again, that's completely ignoring the Big 12, right? You've got undefeated Texas, undefeated Oklahoma. Whoever wins this week, if they go undefeated the rest of the way, win the conference championship, they're going to college football playoff. They will gladly put undefeated Oklahoma or undefeated Texas in there, right? So
yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm just looking at. Okay. Yeah, and just kind of to wrap that point up. I think the Pac-12 can get an even bigger / unexpected boost if USC can win at Notre Dame. That almost just cements them as cannot do any wrong at this point. Then you'd have to take just a collapse at the top. Okay. So the total top 20. You're just talking about Oregon. My metrics would make a pretty good point for your plus 800 there. No real huge movement in or out of the top 10. Liberty top 10, though, was a bit of a surprise. New team to the top 20, Maryland, number 15. And I was just looking at you. You actually have Maryland higher than me. I was a little concerned about that there was something wrong with my numbers. Then you actually have them higher than me. So I feel very, very validated in that. And then Texas A&M and Kentucky sneaking into the top 20 as well. Let me see where you like I said, you have Kentucky number 4. I think you put a lot of Jimbo hatred in this because you have Texas A&M number 29.
Yeah, so I'll quickly read through mine. So I have USC 1. I think my model is still offensive focused, so I think my model just thinks if you can put up a billion points, you win either way. Oregon number 2, so in agreement there. We both seem to like the Ducks. I have Miami number 3, but you have Miami number 2 as well. So that's another source of agreement between our models. And again, massive between Oregon and Miami there. Huge difference from traditional rankings and the books. So that's a fascinating one as well. Or basically our models are both saying Oregon and Miami are huge potential plays. Kentucky 4, Washington. I've got Washington 5. You've got Washington 3, basically about the same. I have Texas 6. You have Texas 7. I have Maryland 7. Then I have Texas State. I weirdly have Texas State really high. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's because...
I've got an inkling on that later. We can hold on to that thought for now.
Okay. Then I've got UCLA up there, very interesting, which is pretty high as well. And then I've got Tennessee, Arizona. Weirdly, my model loves Arizona. Now, to be fair, I believe... Oh, no, it wouldn't be with Jaden Delora. My model just really likes Arizona. I'm not completely sure why. I think even though, like, and this is kind of the way top whatever list should operate. If you lose to a top whatever
Yeah.
team, like if you lose to the third or fourth team or whatever, you shouldn't really get penalized for it. Okay, you lost, but you're still good, right? And where people would just immediately drop Arizona because of that, then they really shouldn't be dropped. Oklahoma there at 12, just a bit behind Texas, but I still think they have a good matchup against Texas. Then I've got Michigan, Oregon State, Georgia, Fresno State, LSU still here in the 17th. Penn State here at 20. Penn State has actually fallen a little bit. They kept Northwestern around a little bit too much. I got Wisconsin there at 19, Liberty at 20. So I actually have Liberty a bit lower than you, but I still feel like Liberty at 20 is still pretty high though. I got Kansas State at 21, Louisville at 22, Missouri at 23, Duke at 24, and then somehow I don't know why my model loves New Mexico State. I don't know why. It has them at 25, and then Kansas 26, UCF. Apparently, it kind of banished them a little bit, but not that far. They're at 27, Ohio State at 28, Texas Texas A&M at 29, and then their opponent this week, Bama at 30. So very interesting. And again, I don't even have Florida State is 40th is 39th, right by Air Force at 38, and Florida at 37th. So my model still kind of hates Florida State for a while, and I have Clemson at 34. So it's interesting what my model likes and doesn't like, but I feel like with Florida State almost losing to Boston College and then kind of not losing but kind of looking like a loss to Clemson, I think my model is still a little iffy on Florida State. But if Florida State comes out, crushes Virginia Tech this week, they'll start climbing up in that ranking, because Alabama was like 50 or 60th, and now they're up at 30. So just keep winning Knowles, and you'll get back up there.
Interesting. My model has Florida State 29 also. So both of our models not really liking our chances on those Florida State futures.
This is where we can get out of those, right? That's the thing. So
yeah, true. All right, ratings by conference, just the things that are interesting. The Big 12 leapfrogged the ACC last week. The other thing, Sun Belt jumped up from 8th to 6th over both the Mountain West and Conference USA. Like I said, the American, not a good conference this season. Look at that. They're ahead of only the MAC, and they are like well behind even the by 7 points. That's monumental behind the Sun Belt. So pretty interesting. Any surprises for you on here? Does this kind of make sense to you?
No, I mean, this does make a lot of sense. The Big Ten definitely feels weaker this year. The Pac-12 feels just really good. The SEC as well feels weaker, right? We're used to the SEC being a dominant force, and I think some people are like, oh, the Pac-12 is almost as good as the SEC, or maybe a little bit better. It's like, no, this is a lot better here. And I think that makes a lot more sense. Like, some of these SEC, like, okay, the top is... I just feel like there's a lot of teams at the top, but I feel like the top is middle compared to the other top of other conferences, and then the bottom is just the bottom. Like, Vanderbilt is low. Some of the other teams are just not particularly good. Mississippi State is not a particularly good team. Just a lot of not good teams in the SEC, and I think our this composite rankings and the models are just saying like these teams are bad. It's bad, right?
Yeah, going back to 2016, which was the first year. This is the first season, and we're not done yet. But this is the first time I've actually had any conference but the SEC first. Literally every week of every season from week 5 forward, it's been the SEC on top. So interesting,
and
what we're
and one point I'll make about this too is that with the NIL, and people said it was going to kind of like balance. People said, oh, it's making the rich richer. It's like, well, Kate, that's true, but it's also kind of balancing things out, because there was always allegations that the SEC schools were paying kids, and now everybody can pay kids, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing this kind of diffusion here. And the other end of this, too, is that we keep hearing rumors about Clemson and Florida State leaving. The SEC, although they have some of the biggest name brands in the sport, these teams are far from dominant. Bama is the weakest they've looked in a long time. Georgia is the worst it's looked in several years as well. No real team seems dominant. ESPN is having money problems. ESPN owns the SEC contract, but they're having money problems. If you're the Big Ten, and you have the rights deal with Fox and NBC, and I think you also have ABC. Oh no, you don't have ABC. ABC is owned by ESPN. But if you have those media rights deals with the other people, and you're like, we want to be the dominant conference here, because first of all, you're actually getting 4 of the top Pac-12 schools next year. You basically add those. So you add the 4 top schools to your conference next year. And then basically, if the Big Ten were to add Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and like Miami, they're the best conference, and they're the biggest conference and the conference with the most lucrative media rights deal. And then at that point, we then start talking about, is the SEC on the clock to break up and eventually join in with, because like if they became that big, if they got those 4 big name brands, at what point does Alabama and Florida and Georgia and Texas and Oklahoma and Auburn, when do they say, okay, fine, we're going to go join the Big Ten because they're getting more money than us? Because I feel like if you were to grab those teams, you would become like you would have Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and potentially Miami, Florida. You have USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin. You would have the top brands in the country, with the exception of maybe 4 SEC teams, 4, maybe 5, 6 SEC teams. You would be a far bigger conference and have a far bigger media footprint. At what point do you then start slowly eating the SEC?
Okay. Your job is a political pollster.
Yes.
You know regional attitudes about the United States of America.
Yes.
Okay. And do you think do you really think the folks of the SEC are gonna join on with the Yankees of the Big Ten?
Well, I mean, they're technically not. They're not based in New York. They're mostly based in the Midwest. So.
Okay, but they're still Yankees.
For money, they will.
I think that there's too much pride for them to do, but we just disagree. One other thing about, I think besides NIL, that is a huge reason why the Pac-12 is at the top. You have inept Jimmy Lake. You have peak Mario doing Mario things in Eugene. You have Clay Helton doing just Clay Helton at his worst. And Carl Durrell, all replaced over the last 2 years by really, really good Kalen DeBoer, by apparently really good and excellent recruiter Dan Lanning, by maybe the best coach not named Ryan Day to win a national championship in Lincoln Riley, and Coach Prime, who's already got to prove a concept after like 3 games. I think that's the biggest difference we're seeing, and then the quarterback play that's kind of gone along with that increase in coaching has been just absolutely awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there has been a massive upgrade in the SEC and sorry, not in the SEC, in the Pac-12 and the coaching, right? And you're seeing the results of that. And I think there are some question marks about some of the SEC schools outside of Georgia, outside of the top ones. There's some question marks at some of those head coaching positions. So, yeah, I think, yeah.
And then the other thing too is just lastly on that is that, Chip Kelly, I don't know what he was doing. It just seemed like he kind of didn't care for a few years, and he finally got his act together. And that's the other thing too is, UCLA, I think they're criminally overlooked. We both have them highly rated. Just the and we'll get to this in a bit in my deeper dive, but the fall they took in the polls for losing by 7 at Utah was just stupid. All right, my top 10 Apex quarterbacks, just a couple of new names in here. The reason I think that your model loves Texas State is the big Ponchatoula, number 7, TJ Finley, checking in for his first visit in the Apex top 10. Another new name. This shocked me. Jalen Milroe. I guess, it's agnostic as to like how bad the bad passes are. If they're not interceptions, I'll just put it at that. There's no minus points for like, boy, you made a really bad decision, but it wasn't intercepted. It's just a harmlessly to the ground pass as far as Apex is concerned. But hey, credit to him. The guy can run, and he can throw the deep ball. It's just everything else that's a little shaky for him.
Yeah. I will say that Bama has, since losing to Texas, there was huge concerns about with them against Ole Miss. They beat Ole Miss. we were concerned against them against Mississippi State. They
Mississippi
put them
State,
away.
yeah.
Good for them. And again, remember Jalen Miller didn't play in that horrible USF game. He that was the other people that played in that game. So he was spared from that. Like when we think of Bama, we think of like, oh my God, they almost lost to USF. Jalen Miller did not almost lose to USF. That was the other people, not Jalen Miller. So I think Bama is finding their stride, but, huge but there.
Yes.
It is against teams that have not been historically amazing. Huge question marks on those teams as well. Ole Miss, again, their biggest win so far this season. Oh, they beat LSU this last week. But outside of that, their other big win was Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech just lost at Bowling Green. So, question marks on some of these teams. And I think you got Texas A&M. You're going to have LSU. You're going to have Auburn, which is actually, that's not that hard to beat Auburn now at this point. But I think you have a cross division you have Tennessee coming up as well. So there are more losses potentially on the schedule for Bama. So Milroe has some opportunity to fall a bit here. But I think Ole Miss and Mississippi State were two of the kind of more permissible defenses. And I think that's kind of why he's been raised a little bit there. And we'll have to see if going up against LSU, well, LSU's defense is horrible, but Texas A&M or Tennessee can bring him down to earth a little bit there.
Yeah, the SEC West is interesting in that, I'd say definitionally it's open. If Texas A&M is looking like the best team, question mark, it's going to have a lot more drama than usual. I think that's an easy bet for this year. All right, top Ryan by player, 2 new entries in here. Washington still has 2 of the top 8 now. Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU is a new name in here. Not surprising since they had like almost 50 points against Ole Miss. And then Robert Lewis of Georgia State, going along with the great season that Granger's having. And good job by Sean Elliott, the coach there. They lost their best receiver last year, Jamari Thrash, to Purdue, but they've groomed in along another guy who's in the top 10 nationally in Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, crazy that 2 players on Washington are both on this list. Again, and 2 on LSU as well. Just kind of crazy there. Georgia State there. Robert Lewis, Georgia State, that's kind of nuts as well. But yeah, Xavier Legette, South Carolina, and Mizzou. It's weird we're talking about the SEC struggling, but like they have a lot of guys on this list. So, interestingly enough, Houston's like not a bad team. They didn't cover the spread against Texas Tech, but they're definitely not a bad team. I think they've definitely improved a little bit, and I think I think they're a team to kind of watch out for. Maybe not this year, but definitely next year potentially as well. They're rebuilding a bit this year after losing Clayton Tune, but I think going forward they could be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, Houston, going back to them for a second, that Samuel Brown's been in this list basically since like week 2, and I'm curious, but not curious enough to watch, since Houston just seems like a bad football team this season. But maybe if they're playing an interesting team, I'll probably watch them just to see what this kid's about. And then this guy at 5th, Gage Larvadain, or whatever his name is at Miami, he's been there since the first week. He's not dropped out of the top 10, which is interesting since Miami's offense is okay, second best in the MAC, but that's not saying a lot. All right, top Ryan by team. The only real new entrant here is Louisville at number 10. I think if we go back, we can see that Jack Plummer was. Jack Plummer was in the top 10 for Apex at number 10. So just Louisville just coming along as a passing offense. Nothing really new or illuminating on here.
An interesting thing I will say there about Louisville, though, you see there in terms of Ryan, they're only 11 yards behind Notre Dame in terms of Ryan. Louisville 6.5, 7-point dogs this week. Notre Dame's coming down to visit them. Well, actually, they're not. It's not that far down. They're just the states border each other. But interesting dynamic there. This Louisville team is not bad. They've played a couple of close games, but that's due to them having leads and then and then basically them playing insanely conservative because of those massive leads. So don't fault them for that. This Notre Dame team is a little I'm not. I don't have the most faith in this Notre Dame team. Watch out for this Louisville team. They could pull up an upset this week because the thing is, no one's paying attention to this upset for Notre Dame. They could lose this game, I believe.
Yeah, that line is sneaky short compared to, I think, a pub, for lack of a better term. I don't think it really mirrors the widespread opinion or impression of these two teams. I'm looking for it right here. Where is you, Notre Dame? What is that number? It's like 7, right? Yeah, there it is.
7. I see 7, 6. I think I saw 6.5 somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Top running offenses, 3 new in the top 10 as my dogs bark their approval at the Toledo Rockets going up into the top 10. I forget, they played a pushover last week, and I think, they played Northern Illinois, and they have a horrible defense, so that pushed them up here. Tennessee, really unfortunate. I don't know if you saw Brew McCoy's out for the season. He had a really bad injury against South Carolina. Now, they're able to run the ball, but that's not really what they, do to really make themselves super awesome. But it's a good sign, I guess, that they can run. And then Texas popped into the top 10 after going against Kansas, and they just ran for a considerable amount against the Jayhawks. Oh, and Air Force went back to number 1. I don't know if you remember. I think Liberty was ahead of them last week, but hey, Brady Hoke, the cure for the common run offense, I guess.
Again, Air Force and Liberty, watch out for them. Those are 2 teams that no one really pays attention to them. You get them with massive. You can basically. Don't be afraid to lay. And this is, again, these are teams that we're like, oh, there we have like 3 touchdown favorites. They're only like 1 or 2 touchdown favorites. We play them, and we usually do really well with those. They're some of my favorite plays are Air Force plays right now. So, shout out to them. I really like them.
Great. Fun team to bet on too. All right. Bum lists, plural. Our guy, Keegan Shoemaker, finally threw enough to get onto the bum list. He debuts at number 2. Number 4, Noah Kim at Michigan State. I think playing at Iowa will do that to a lot of people, in fairness. This Middle Tennessee State guy's been just on the border the whole time, so it doesn't surprise me that he snuck in here. And hey, guess what? Chevin Cordero, who a lot of my USC buddies are telling me how great he's going to be this season. Nah, he's in the bottom 10 nationally. The losers in Team Ryan, Auburn. Not a surprise if you saw them against Georgia or have seen them play. Their passing offense is just horrible. Oklahoma State, I'm going to do a deeper dive on them at some point. It just ain't working from the offensive side of the ball. And then Akron, I didn't know this. My guy Biscuit just told me about this today. DJ Irons is out for the season with a torn ACL. That hurts. Sad. That hurts. Mm-hmm. And look who's right ahead of them is Bowling Green. Bowling Green has just scored 38 at Georgia Tech, and still they're a bottom 10 explosive pass offense. And just take a look up here at Wyoming's number 3. Just keep that in mind for a moment. I don't know. Any of these teams you want to poop on, or quarterbacks you want to take a shot at?
No, I think it's Emory Jones being on there is interesting as well. EJ Warner as well. Some ones that are kind of surprises, some ones that are not kind of surprises. But yeah, Brennan Armstrong as well. Like, that one is one that was like a bit of a surprise. Yeah. People were kind of higher on NC State and Brennan Armstrong this year.
I was.
We kind of. I mean, I wasn't that high on them, but I'm like, okay, they're gonna like do something. But nope, they have decided to not do something. So yeah.
In fairness to EJ Warner, he's faced 2 really good defenses in Rutgers and Miami. I think we can give him a little bit of space for that versus like Chevin Cordero, who's played USC, which should be a gimme. Yeah. All right, defensive apex. Marshall just continues to defy gravity here, and I'm not going to argue about it anymore, but it's going to end at some point. Iowa jumps into the top 10. Thank you, Noah Kim. Thank you, interim coach Mark D'Antoni. Fresno State in the top 10. I forget who they played, but they just Nevada. Yeah, that'll help you there.
Didn't cover the spread though. That hurt.
No, yeah. I don't know if you were on that. I know our buddy Isaiah
Yeah.
was. That was a tough one. Oklahoma, yeah, you're facing that new quarterback at Iowa State, Rocco Becht. And Alabama, not surprising at all. They've just been tough, although they're new to the top 10. But, our questions about them are not on defense.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Anything here worth commenting upon?
Yeah, I mean, I Liberty is interesting there at one at two. Marshall again defying gravity, negative apex. At some point that bubble will pop, but just not this week apparently. Yeah. Ohio, a MAC team up there as well, very interesting as well.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma is also pretty good though, and this is why I'm really hyped for the Red River this weekend. I think that's going to be. I think Oklahoma has a very legit chance to take out Texas. I think, although the model does favor Texas by less than the spread, I would say, I still think Oklahoma can knock them off here. And I think that you're giving me 6.5, 10. You're giving me 6.5, 7 with Oklahoma on a neutral field against a team that has Texas basically beat a Bama team that I don't particularly think was good then, and I don't particularly think they're good now. Yeah, I'm taking the points, and I'm taking the money line there.
Yeah. And just to kind of game theory that out a little bit, I'm wondering what Oklahoma is to make the playoff.
I can check that.
That doesn't seem too crazy.
Oklahoma to make the playoffs plus 350. To win outright 25-1, but I saw 28-1 in a different book. I kind of like the 25-1. I think they'd be like a sneakily good team if they got in. They could potentially have the right combination of offense and defense to win it.
Well, I guess, and we have them in Texas in both top 11 in offense and defense, and I'm sure in what their price is, about triple that of Texas's to win.
Yeah.
The playoff? Yeah. Interesting for those so inclined. Okay, top defensive gab. This is the best running defenses. Texas A&M runs in number 3 after facing Arkansas, who cannot run the ball, despite what my Twitter buddy says. And James Madison debuts in the top 10 at number 5. I think they played Troy, who's not really great on offense. And also want to point out UCLA in the top 10 still. I think they're just, like I said, criminally overlooked. And back to the top, Jacksonville State, notwithstanding that horrible game versus Sam Houston State, still number 1 in run defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think Jacksonville State being number 1 is fascinating. Texas A&M being up there is interesting as well. You've got a Bama defense a Bama offense this week that's not particularly good. I think you can potentially stop them, make Jalen Miller throw, and that may or may not be a good thing. Oklahoma and Texas, again, pretty sneakily good defenses there. So and UCLA, again, another really strong defense. They are favorites against an undefeated Washington State, and they're favorites for a reason. So keep that in mind.
Many reasons, and I'll actually get a little deeper to that in just a moment here. All right, market intelligence. So these are the lines that are trying to tell me something or I'm missing something. We're going to go over these and see if you can maybe illuminate what I might be missing. First one, Middle Tennessee giving 4.5 to Jacksonville State. Is this just the market overreacting to the horrible Jacksonville State last week? I can't believe there's really a lot of faith in Middle Tennessee. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is. It's kind of weird. I don't fully understand this line. This line is down to 3.5. I bet Jacksonville State a couple days ago at 3.5. I really do like. I really do like Jacksonville State here. I think Middle Tennessee is not that good. My model still kind of likes them, but not that much. I think Jacksonville State is like secretly not bad. I think Sam Houston State scored on them last week. I'm not sure exactly how they did that, but they did, and I'm going to kind of just fade it and chalk it up as they just got really lucky or they did something they weren't expecting. And I think that's just kind of a flukiness, and Middle Tennessee will go back to sucking. And as we talked about, right, Jacksonville State I think was actually I think one of the better. Jacksonville State had a pretty good rushing attack, right? Middle Tennessee cannot stop. Middle Tennessee is pretty bad on defense, so I think if Jacksonville State can get back, like, and Middle Tennessee State's quarterback is on the bum list, and they basically rely on running the ball, and I think they're not. Jacksonville State has good run defense, so I think Jacksonville State has a good matchup here. I think they can win.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if the market needs to listen to our podcast. Clearly,
Mm-hmm.
the next one, and this is I'm very much in an awkward situation here. Number one, this number is up to 6.5 now, and
Yeah.
I believe me, nobody is a bigger believer in Jerry Kill and the Kill Machine at New Mexico State, but FIU has found a quarterback, and like I outlined, they're a different team with this kid, and numbers, the money's just going away, towards New Mexico State. I don't get it. I don't know if we're just ahead on this one. And again, I'm not one who loves to bet against New Mexico State, but I with the more money that's going, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't. Am I just kind of weird on island here?
So I don't know how much. So I've got this at 6.5. I
Yeah.
actually grabbed a parlay with Jacksonville State plus 3.5 and New Mexico State -6. I don't love this. The thing is, New Mexico State should have beaten Hawaii by a
Hawaii,
lot.
yeah.
They should have beaten Hawaii, and they should have beat them by a lot. Now we ended up getting the push on that, but I feel very sad because not only did I bet the 3 and the money line, and then I also live bet -2.5. And then I think I live bet at one point I live bet -12.5 at like plus 260, and literally all of them should have cashed. Literally every single one of those bets should have cashed. New Mexico State let them back in with a bunch of stupid penalties. And I just don't know how I feel about going back to the well in New Mexico State. Now, to be fair, though, that was traveling to Hawaii, so that is probably a bit far. And what I'm realizing is this is actually pretty significant. This is almost as much different from New Mexico State to Hawaii as the other way, right? FIU to New Mexico State, do you know how far that is? That's an insanely far distance for these guys to travel. And again, we talked about this. I believe this is FIU's first conference road game, or close to it, I think. So either they did it or they traveled to Liberty, but Liberty is nowhere near as far as New Mexico State. So I think this is a significant travel distance. So I don't necessarily hate New Mexico State here. I think they could potentially cover this spread. My model really loves New Mexico State here, but I think my model just likes them anyways. So, but I'm a little iffy on them. I think there's something here, and I think the reason they have that spread so big is because they want to bait people into betting FIU, and I think the right play is New Mexico State.
Yeah, I'm guessing the one thing too, that maybe this is more along the lines of like what they think will get money. FIU is just coming off a huge loss to Liberty. I can completely forgive that because Liberty's been all through all of these top 20 offenses, defenses, this, that, and everything else. And then you've got a true freshman quarterback that's dealing with that. Okay. I can get past that real quick. Good points though. BC and Army. Army is giving 3.5. What this tells me is, to go back to part one, Tony Elliott, you blew it. You lost to a team that is getting points at Army. Well done, bud.
Yeah, an Army is not particularly good. I actually have Boston College as a favorite, a pretty sizable favorite here, but I'm not touching this. I have zero desire to touch this game at all. Nope, not a chance. Yep, not touching it or watching this game, but just very ugly. I'm not touching this. Nope.
Yeah. And then along the lines, Bowling Green is getting 11 at Miami, who's a nice offense, Miami, Ohio. But this just tells me that, the market's giving zero credit for whatever happened when Bowling Green won at Georgia Tech by 11.
Yeah, they're like,
right?
yeah, they're like, well, that was weird. Anyway, so yeah, they're 11-point dogs to another MAC team because they're just like, yeah, that's not happening again. Some weird combination of things happened, and that's just not happening again. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like the way you said that. It's the anyway line. And speaking of the anyway line, Arkansas State getting 16 at Troy. Arkansas State has had a couple of good weeks on offense against hopeless Southern Miss and hard to figure out Massachusetts. And I think them getting 16 at Troy is basically an okay, anyway, kind of line, as you said.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting. I do only have Troy as 9-point favorites, so I'd slightly lean towards Arkansas State in this. But I'm not. I'm not touching this.
No,
That is like a
I
good luck.
can't. No.
No, the thing is, on one hand, I can't trust Troy. I feel like Troy is a little too overvalued, and they're due for regression at some point. But at the same time, that I'm not betting that with Arkansas State. I'll just wait because I think they're in. No, they're in the Sun Belt, and they don't play midweek games. That's CUSA, and then I think Maction in a bit. But they're so. That won't be a midweek game, but at some point we will fade Troy. That's not against Arkansas State. Nope.
Yeah. Tulsa at FAU. FAU has been, their passing game has been horrible. They lost Casey Thompson. Tulsa actually looked really, really good against Temple. I actually have Tulsa just straight up winning this game. I don't get FAU giving points to Tulsa. Now, I don't know if Tulsa had a couple of really bad games that people have seen, but I can't see the case for FAU giving points here unless there's some sneaky, awesome home field advantage that I am unfamiliar with.
What do I have here? Yeah, I have Tulsa -7. So I think I think I've bet Tulsa already on some book somewhere. I've bet Tulsa already. I remember looking at that. I'm like, Tulsa's not bad. So, yeah, I don't know why FAU is laying points. Yeah,
I think we're just ahead of the story, and I think maybe there's too much of the preseason narrative of Tom Herman and turning this around.
Now FAU did cover against Illinois, which is kind of crazy, but
true. Yeah, that's a good point. And that was on the road. Good point. Colorado is giving just 5.5 at Arizona State, which is interesting. In that Arizona State's been so woeful. I would think that this would be a larger line, but if you kind of look at what both these teams did at home against USC as a barometer, which I hate to use, but I'm guessing that's kind of guiding the market here. I would think that Colorado would be giving considerably more than this to Arizona State, wouldn't you?
yeah, I think so as well. But I have Colorado -9, so there is some value there. There's the full 7 there as value. I'm seeing this as 6 in some books. And I think there is some value on Colorado. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. So I think it's definitely playable.
Yeah. And then lastly, this is one of those instances where I can't really align the spread and the total. So Fresno's giving 5 to Wyoming, and the total is 46. And I think when we were talking about Team Ryan, and I said, look, Wyoming's third from last. Fresno, I had them as like a top 20 defensive, I believe. I think they're a top 10 defenses, if I remember correctly. Sorry, there's just a lot that I've shown here. Let me pull this up real quick. Fresno, I have as number 7 nationally. And I'm not saying my numbers are the best and be all, end all, and the complete source of truth. I just have a hard time seeing a really bad Wyoming offense scoring 20 points. Now, maybe Wyoming can keep it within 5 points because they're tough at home and they're a good defense. I just can't see. This is projecting to basically, what would that be? 42, 21, 26 to 21 Fresno. I can see Fresno getting 26. I can't see Wyoming getting 21 points. They're just not that good of an offense, and they're playing an elite defense. Do you kind of see it the same way? Just the spread and the total don't line up to me at all.
To me, the spread doesn't make sense. I actually have Fresno as a much bigger favorite. Where is Fresno here?
This is one of those late games on Saturday, I think. This sounds like CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, it is a CBS Sports game. It's the most CBS Sports game. I have Fresno State -21, and I kind of like that line. I think the thing is, I think there's probably some like conference road game on this too, but at the same time, it's not that far. It's only now it's a very small stadium, so you're not getting the kind of electric crowd you would get with Fresno State. 'Cause they have actually a relatively bigger stadium, but at the same time, like okay, people are like, oh, you never want to have to go out to Wyoming. Okay, but you're not that far in Fresno State. You're okay, Fresno is what, mid California, right?
Yeah.
So you're not
I
that
guess,
far.
yeah. If we're gonna play this game, all right. I that's I don't know if you fly into Laramie. It's not like Laramie is a metropolis, and I don't know if for Fresno charters, maybe that's part of it. And I think Wyoming is actually the highest elevation in all of FBS.
Mm.
But is that going to gas the defense? I don't know. We'll find out. I love those. Well, ordinarily I'd be all over this, but that's at the same time as Arizona at USC. So this will be my secondary game. Kind of my during commercials and halftime.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, Deeper dives. So I mentioned this last week, and I just wanted to quantify everything. So, kind of the background for this, I've just titled this "Road Trips from Hell." It's really those first, and you just mentioned this quite a bit in part one and part two today. That first conference road game is just a bitch. And I noticed this after a few years of the Pete Carroll era. So I just thought a good kind of, good test case would be look at his entire record when he was at USC for all 9 years. And we've got basically what he did in his first conference road game. So he went 4-5 with an average margin of winning by 5.3. That's basically all a function of this crazy 2005 game where they just, that was that best offense ever that USC had with Leinart, Bush, Lundale, and 3,000-yard receivers. So you compare that 4-5 with an average margin of 5.3. For their other Pac-10 road games for the rest of the, all those seasons, they were 25-5 with a margin of 15.8. Because this is near and dear to my heart, I'm not trying to say one thing or another. Just it was a really big example that it taught me a lesson. I think that we can probably, impute this, to seasons going forward. And for example, I just pulled up for the Pac-12, the first conference road game for every team so far. Now, Washington State has not yet played, so there's 11 games here. So road teams are 4-7. What's really interesting here is against the spread, they're 2-9. Arizona State, improbably, I did not see this coming, covered at Cal. The only other one that covered was Oregon, and Oregon kind of covered themselves in their own poop for about 2 quarters in that game. They were actually trailing Stanford for way too long, considering Stanford's got some challenges. So I bring this up. Obviously, there's something here. Now I've got the big caution sign here. The sharpest approach here is to quantify the trend. Don't just look at this and just say automatically, yeah, okay, well, Washington State's at UCLA. I'm going to bet UCLA then. You might be ahead of some dopes out there, but the same dopes are probably also missing that UCLA is just criminally overlooked too. The big thing here is to quantify the trend. So, I've mentioned this a little bit, and I think that, as some off-season homework, I think Robert and I really want to go back and just kind of go to this. And this is interesting. You can, as a proxy, maybe say, okay, maybe a team's about 10 points worse in that first game versus, you'd otherwise expect. But really the thing is point spreads are more of a symptom than a cause. I'd really want to look at the underlying, like, okay, points or yards per play, interceptions, just the stuff that should be repeatable in other environments, and just you'd be able to, isolate, okay, how much is just this one instance really setting a team back? So
Yeah.
that's your homework. Take care of that, will you?
Yes. Okay. I'll do that for no. I mean, in the off season, yes. Not for next week though. No, I really like the caution sign there, and it's an important point that I'd like to say too. Is that yes, be aware of this trend, but don't necessarily blind bet this trend, right? So, for example, you could say, "Oh, okay, well they were 2-9, so let's just blind bet the other side." And okay, well, yeah, you may have had some success there, not necessarily. guaranteed success. And the thing is, I'd say like, okay, look, if you like the home team in that case, if it's the first game at home versus like okay, bet that team. If not, then if you like the road team, then kind of stay away, because the thing is, again, those spreads are generally shorter anyways, and then they still fail to cover those shorter spreads because they try to get people to buy in on those spreads. So basically, it's just because it's a game on the road doesn't mean it's a lock. So always be a little careful of that, and don't just be like, well, blindly bet a trend. That's one of the things I generally hate is blind betting trends. There's always used to be some of these trends like, oh, every NFL preseason game bet the under. Well, guess what? People just said, screw, we're just not going to care about defense anymore. And then like the over was like 11-2 or something in a 1 week, like, or some insane thing. Like when people start saying like, and the one movie I saw before, kind of similar to what we do here. I think it's Kevin Costner. It's Two for the Money. I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
okay.
no, it was it's
no, yeah, not Kevin
Pacino
Costner
and McConaughey.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, that's right, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah.
I want to see where you're going with this, by the way, because this is, go ahead.
So there, you've seen this movie
many times. Yeah, way too many times.
And there's a guy on there who's in some ways similar to me. So basically, he starts handicapping college games, and then he basically gives out picks for money, and then basically he gets picked up by, I can't remember what his name is, but the guy who played Gordon Gekko in the Wolf of Wall Street, I think. And he basically adds him to his team, and then they have a team of guys who gives out NFL picks for Sunday. And one of the guys is a kind of computer guy, analyst guy, and he has like these trends of like, oh, road dogs going on the road into an open air stadium in the rain are like 2-7 against the spread on like a third Sunday in November. Like, it's crazy trends like that, and I hate that level of like, oh, this very specific thing, this dog is. I hate that in general, but I think if you have a more generic thing like, first road game, that's a pretty simple trend. We're not looking at like NFL games played on a Saturday in a stadium in the rain with a dog of more than 10. Like, you can obviously get way too granular on this, but you're like, oh, first road game, first conference road game. That's totally fine. That is a very fair, very safe trend to look at. But again, I'd say don't necessarily always fade the trend. Just be aware of the trend and be like, okay, I am placing this bet in spite of that or because of that. And although it's nice to, it seems like a great idea, just blind bet a trend, you can also get bit by that too. So be aware of it, and when you're placing your bet and keep track of that.
Yeah, another way to say that is clearly I think the market doesn't appreciate this angle yet, but you never know when they're going to, just like when you said earlier about the preseason. You never know when just the lines are going to adjust, and believe me, if you're just betting the angle blindly, you're going to lose a lot of money before you realize that the market's caught up. So you need to quantify. The second point I want to make out of this is to go for 45 seconds into a horse racing analogy. A lot of the times when you see a bias in a racetrack, if you see, there are definite biases from time to time. A lot of times you'll see the horse on the lead will lead the whole way and nobody catches him. And the better thing than betting on the day of the bias, that's nice, but you kind of don't know for sure. But when you look back and say, this day, all the horses on the lead ran, and if you know it was an extreme bias, at the next time, if you had a horse that was trying to come from behind but just couldn't get up for the win, different circumstance, different day, you know that the circumstances will be better. I bring that up because you can see a lot. Okay, just to use an example, like who just stunk last week on the road. Washington looked like crap. I wouldn't just say, oh my God, Washington's terrible. Washington was in a bad spot. And I guess the other thing is like Arizona was in a great spot. They were catching a team making their first road trip of the season in the conference. I have zero confidence in Arizona's ability to be equally as good at the Coliseum. Not to spoil anything, this is not a game we're going to do. I don't expect Arizona's defense to be anywhere near as good against USC at the Coliseum as it was hosting Washington in its first game. Takeaway there being quantify it and then know not just what you see at the game, but how can you take advantage of that after the game where you're going to be ahead of the market. I actually saw a piece in The Athletic that said, hey, Arizona's defense is ahead of schedule. No, they're not. They stink. They just were in a great spot. 2 weeks ago, I just showed that their defense still sucks this season. Thirdly, you said that there's someone in the movie Two for the Money that's like you. Does that mean that you are a mediocre actor in really shaky, horrible movies?
No. I meant in terms of he was big on I think he did computer modeling and stats, and it's because I remember when I watched that movie, I'm like, oh, is this me? And then he did all these weird sort of trends. I'm like, no, that's not what I do at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie it's kind of entertaining, but 80% is entertaining for the wrong reason. I'll just put it that way. But it's one of those I can't really pass up though. Mm-hmm. All right. Buck the Bookie. If you're interested, just take a screenshot of this. If you don't know the rules yet, anything that you're interested in right now, I'm still ahead of you and DraftKings. You need to cash some tickets here. Granted, these are all futures.
Yes.
But you gotta cash something for at least 500 to the swing would be you have to make up 500 on me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I think.
Okay.
I would say that the only bet I'm kind of a little worried about a couple bets. I'm worried about Ohio State champions and maybe LSU, but I think they'll figure it out at some point. And then obviously Texas is concerning, but I like Big Ten. I like Penn State Big Ten, and I like Florida State to make the playoffs. I like those.
You don't have a Pac-12 bet, and you were just talking about Oregon earlier.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is I gave a bunch of Oregon lines away, so I don't know. I don't even know what... Okay, fine. What would you give me Oregon to win the Pac-12? Let's find what DraftKings says.
Well, we've kind of beaten that to death. That's
the one line I didn't say.
Yeah, actually kind of smart people I whose opinion I value think that they're the best team in the Pac-12 at the moment. I wouldn't give you more than plus 180.
Plus 180. Okay, what does DraftKings have? Plus 220. That's actually the best. That's better price in my book. So okay, give me 75 at plus 220 for that. And then what would you give me Air Force to win the Mountain West?
Oh, man. Now you're taking my own plays and just turning them back in my face. God, this is tough. Yeah, they're... See, you're not going to get the dead money angle with me. I'm pretty sure that DraftKings is going to be your spot to go here. I can't give you more than 220.
220? DraftKings is plus 190, so I'll take 50 from that for you.
Are you serious?
Yeah, plus.
What do they have Boise? What do they have Boise at?
Plus 320.
Wow.
Plus, okay. So they have Air Force plus 190, Fresno plus 220, Boise plus 320, and then everybody else is plus 1,000 or worse.
Wait, what was Fresno?
Fresno plus 220.
Okay, so they're both at plus 220.
So Bet365 has Air Force plus 200, Fresno plus 225, Boise 275, which is even more laughable. And,
Okay, so you get I gave you plus 220 on Air Force, right?
Yeah.
And how much? 50 points?
50.
Okay.
Only reason I like 50 is because last year they screwed me.
Yeah.
Last year they were because we were on them. We were like, oh man, 2 or 3 to 1. We're like, let's keep betting that. And then they lost a random game to someone, and then they just blew all that up.
Wyoming was the beginning, yeah. And they just kind of gave up for a little bit there, yeah. Okay. Looking ahead, so kind of looking back before we look ahead. Here's where we were last week. I went 2-0 with one push. You actually went 4-1 with one push. Well done. One of those was a money line, giving you the weird 6.6.
Oh, that's why you're giving me 6.6. Ah, okay,
yeah. The dual model plays a disappointing 3 and 4. Although Yeah, I don't know. I can't count the Duke as a bad loss because Jacksonville State was an incredibly lucky win.
Yeah, those kind of cancel
Um,
out. Mississippi
yeah,
State, I think, it's not necessarily Nebraska. That was just I don't even know what happened there. But Mississippi State is kind of like it's not really our fault because we're really low on Bama. Our model can't really differentiate between like, oh, this was Bama with Jalen Milroe, this was Bama without
yeah,
Jalen Milroe. So I think that's kind of not necessarily. I'm not gonna lie, I played it and I lost money there too. But at the same time, I think it's like that's not necessarily our fault. Oh yeah, the Louisville was a push. That's what the zero's for. Yeah.
yeah. The against the number.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, agree. Okay, so the preseason upsets. This week I've got Iowa State over TCU, and that would still be an upset. Brendan Moore actually called before the season Texas A&M over Bama, and good
That's
for
this
him.
week.
They're actually are they getting points? Yeah, they're getting points a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
I like
It
his
was three and a
chances
half
there.
down to 2.5. It was 3.5 now down to 2.5. I still like Texas A&M though. I think they're the better team.
Yeah. All right. So this week, just so people understand the population here.
The first line.
Yeah. So what I started with was where I have variances of 7 or more. And then I've just noted where the LeanTossup model, basically Robert's simulations have it. And where they agree and say it's a play, they're in bold. And if they don't agree that it's a play, it's not in bold. So the BuckMetrics model projections will be the ones that are not in bold. And the ones that are bold, again, are going to be the dual model plays. So yeah, I feel very comfortable agreeing with the model, since, like I've said, this is a Liberties and Menace podcast, and I think your model is taking that literally. 60, and you know what?
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Here's the thing: if they want to win by 60, they can win by 60. Like if they want to, they can. They just, I think at once they score a 55, they'll be like, all right, guys, I think that's enough, guys. It's Sam Houston State. I think we could stop now. We can rest our starters here. And remember, it's Sam Houston State going on the road to Liberty. This is gonna like,
Yeah,
and again, so this is actually kind of fascinating because there are this game is actually so important, not just for college football, but also has NFL implications too. So this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to draw a line from here to the NFL from last weekend on Sunday. So what happened was last week, obviously, Sam Houston State had an offensive explosion, scoring 28 points, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
4 times more touchdowns than they had scored all season just in last week. They massively performed expectations. Their quarterback threw for, I think, like 300 yards. Just insane performance by him. Last Sunday, uh, Justin Fields, the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, had basically the best game of his career, threw for over 300, I think 25 yards or some insanely high number against the Denver Broncos. And then Sunday night, Zach Wilson, someone who had number 2 former pick from BYU, number 2 overall pick from BYU quarterback, he basically almost beat the Chiefs in Sunday Night Football. A crazy game. Now, unfortunately, I was on the wrong side of that because he actually Patrick Mahomes ran towards the end zone, took a knee at the 1-yard line. If he rushed in and would have won by 10, we would have covered the spread there. That's a little sad, but anyways, you can't win everything. But yeah, that was a crazy. So basically, what I'm saying is those are crazy outlier games by teams and specifically quarterbacks. Now, this game is on Wednesday. If Sam Houston State goes back to being the team we think they are, then that shows that okay, that was clearly a 1 game off, and that's exactly what my model is saying. My model is saying I do not care. That was very clearly a one-off. That's not happening. That's very clearly an outlier. That's not happening. Again, now this is the interesting one. So if Sam Houston State continues that improvement, usually you get these one-off outliers, and usually they don't make a trend. But we now have 3 examples of huge, very clear outliers by players that people have thought have been kind of horrible. So if Sam Houston State is horrible tomorrow night, we're recording this on Tuesday. If they're horrible tomorrow night, that basically says, hey, guess what, guys? Justin Fields might not be that good still, or Zach Wilson might also not be that good. So that's why this game has NFL implications. I know that's a crazy line to draw, but it does.
well done though. Yeah, the total on this one, clearly our models are on different sides. I think because you've just got Liberty never being stopped apparently, and I think my model's got a little more faith in the Sam Houston defense. So Not a dual model play, but I do have that under, and that number has moved down since to like 45. It looks like now. Western Kentucky at Louisiana Tech. This is interesting. Both of
Yeah.
us are models like Louisiana Tech. Now Bachmeyer is hurt, although I'm less concerned about that. I think that his
Mm-hmm.
backup came in was reasonably okay last week, and they sealed up the win. It's interesting too. Hambone texted me and said, "Why does your model like Western Kentucky?" But not particularly close, or Louisiana Tech, and we've actually got both of our models have Louisiana Tech as the outright favorite here. So that's also in the not here one of those wrong team favorite plays as well.
Mm-hmm. This one
Anything
is
on that?
fascinating.
Yeah, go ahead.
This one was fascinating to me as well because I saw this and I'm like, wait, what? Why would I have LA Tech favored here? And then I looked at it and
Yeah,
Bachmeyer is hurt, but my model thinks that might actually be kind of a positive if that's possible. He might actually be the replacement might be pretty good. Remember, they actually covered the spread against Nebraska. Now that's not saying much, but also Western Kentucky's not that good. So I think there's a chance that LA Tech could be not bad. Now they got the job done against UTEP. They covered an alt spread there too. Probably should have won that more, but I think that was a road game too, right? They were on the road against UTEP as well. So I think this could be a very interesting position for them. So I think yeah, let's. I'm okay with putting something on LA Tech there. If this gets up to 7, I'm just going to pound this even more. I already put something on at I think 6, or no, you have it at 7, I think. Let me see
yeah.
here.
I've got it 6.5.
I've got 6.5 too. I grabbed 6.5, I think, somewhere. I think if it gets up to 7, I'll hit it again. But yeah, I like LA Tech there on Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, the next one. This is interesting. I've got this as a clear play, like I talked about. I think it was at the end of part one. Western Michigan actually is the third best offense in the MAC. They're very much improving. My model likes them at Mississippi State somehow. Your model has this, there's a variance, but not enough for me to count as a dual model play. I actually grabbed Western Michigan. Um, don't know, it looks like you're probably not going to play it with just not that much of a difference here.
Yeah, this one is kind of I'm not touching that. I think that's pretty close to that line. I'm just kind of like whatever. I think they could cover it. I just have flashbacks to Western Michigan letting Iowa score like 41 on them or something. It was some insanely high number. I have flashbacks to that. I don't particularly want to relive that. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave that one alone.
Fair. And it really kind of a very similar setup here. Toledo going to Massachusetts. You've got this off by a little bit about a field goal, and I've got this more by 2 touchdowns. So not a dual model play. I've just played it for a half a unit just because there is a variance. My model actually in the variance of 11 and higher actually when I think like 8-4 last week, I think. Now I was too freaking dumb to just pass them all along as I am this week. So apologies to those of you who followed my plays and didn't get all of them. You're getting all of them this week.
I will say
Probably
this. Yeah. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Finish.
go. No,
No.
no,
Okay.
please.
I will say it's fascinating though that like sometimes our models are like both on the same side of being like against the line, but sometimes like one of our models agrees with the books and sometimes the other one does and the other one disagrees. And I think that's a really nice point to have where it's like, okay, you're out alone on this. Like last week with Kansas. Now, okay, that's not necessarily the same thing because Jalen Daniels was out, so it's not necessarily fair. But um, I think that it's very nice to have it sometimes where like the other model kind of acts as a ground for the other model where it's like, okay, one model thinks this is value, the other model doesn't, then you don't play that. I think that's a very safe thing to say, don't touch that. And I think that's a really good, nice feature to have.
Yeah. Well, that's how the dual model plays went like 59.2 or 4% last season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the former of that, literally, we both have the same total here at LSU at Missouri. We both have 77 with totally different methodologies. Pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I hammered this one. I don't like overs as much as I do unders. I'm more confident in unders, but definitely like this one.
When LSU can only win games by scoring like a billion points, I think it's okay.
Yeah, and just to remind you, going back to the BuckMetrics metrics part, Brady Cook is actually a higher rated quarterback than Jackson Dart by a good amount. So if you're worried about can another team repeat what Ole Miss did? Yeah, the offense as a whole isn't as great, but there's a better passing attack. And if you saw that game, truly the real weak link of LSU is in the back seven there. Their pass defense is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going against you on this next one here. I'm pretty comfortable with the under here. My model loves unders. If the total is 82 and a half, or if I'll tell you what, I'll even be a gentleman. If the total is 80, next week we'll just lead with that about how awesome your model nailed this one.
To be honest, sometimes the model does weird things. I think I'm more willing to chalk that one up as a model doing a weird thing. But I could be wrong. Who knows, right? I mean, I think when Oregon State and Washington State played, I think that was kind of close to what that total was. So I don't know. UCLA's defense is good enough. I don't think they should be able to. But I
Yeah,
think your model is better at sniffing out unders though. So I will say that. So sometimes the total, because I remember there's been a couple times my model's been like really high on team scoring points, and that just doesn't happen. Like the last two Notre Dame games as well. So I think I mean, I still like the model. Don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes it's not the greatest in terms of points scored, and there's reasons for that. But I think that's something more to look at in the off season. I think there are some other changes I need to fix this year, and I think I've fixed a lot of the games between teams from different conferences. That's been fixed. I think now the next step is okay. Let's clean up the pace of games and stuff. That's going to be more for a next year project.
yeah. And the next thing, since I've got all your results, I think I want to backtest your totals as much as the sides against the market, just to see if kind of what your model indicates is the best time to strike on a over or under.
Mm-hmm.
This next one I haven't bet yet. I haven't seen a line. I don't know if there's more questions about Virginia Tech quarterback, because I couldn't get a line on this one until really late on Virginia Tech. But we both have this as a significant like two score
Yeah.
difference between the market. Kind of one of those things where I'm just going to plug my nose and play it, and just trust both the models. And I maybe blame Pat Narduzzi if this doesn't work for pumping up the Virginia Tech numbers. That's the only thing I can
I
see
am
that's really is at work here.
Yeah, I'm worried about this one as well. I think if it makes sense, I think the problem is the fact that Florida State played Boston College too close, and then they also played Clemson too close. And I think our models are like, oh, Florida State's not actually that good, but we know they are that good. But then also like their win against LSU is looking worse and worse by the week, right? Like people are like, oh man, they blew at LSU by 21 points. Like, well, maybe they should have beaten them by more, right? And I'm of really two minds of this. I think the best play is to hedge out some Florida State futures and not. I'm not. I don't think I'm touching this. I might play some Jordan Travis overs, like over 1.5 touchdowns, whatever that comes out to be. I might play a couple of stuff on this one, but I don't think I'm playing the spread on this one. I want to see this. This is the game I'm going to pay the most attention to. I'm gonna figure out if like Travis had been hurt a little bit, so I'm gonna figure out if he's
Mm-hmm.
feeling better now after a week off. If they've cleaned up some stuff on defense, cleaned up some stuff on offense, if they come out and cover this spread, I'm back. I think the model is gonna be a lot happier with Florida State. If not, if my model is correct here, this is only a 2-score game. Then it's full on panic mode for Florida State, and then it's okay. How good is North Carolina? How good is Miami? Right? That's my take on this game. If my model's right on this game, then I'm going to say, okay, my model's right about Florida State. We need to bail on Florida State futures right now, and that's my take on it.
Yeah, fair. I'm just looking at their schedule here. This is Virginia Tech's first conference road game of the season too, so maybe this is a huge get well. I'm just going to take my inability to get a number on this one as a sign not to play it. It's an official model play, but not with my hard-earned or otherwise earned money. We talked about this one in the market intelligence. Just we both have this Tulsa as an outright favorite. I'm betting that I have grabbed them both against the number
Mm-hmm.
and against and just straight up.
Yeah, yeah, I like that one too. FAU is like It's possible that Tom Herman coming here, this is going to be a bigger rebuilding project than it
Yeah.
seemed. And now again, I believe in Tom Herman to field a good team, not a top 10 team, but a good team. And I think give him some time, he might clean this up. But I think Tulsa's actually kind of a little bit better. They cleaned up against Temple last week. I think Tulsa's not that bad, which makes Oklahoma even better too, just a little bit. So
Yeah. Um, in part one, we spoke about how San Diego State is dead and Boise is dead adjacent, having just one of their two losses as a close-ish game at San Diego State. This is interesting. We both have this basically even between San Jose State and Boise, which is more of an indictment given that, to just go back to the bum list, San Jose State's quarterback was number 10 on the bum list. So um, I'm I've played this. I grabbed the 9.5. I wouldn't be surprised if this number's gone down. Do you have a later number than the 9.5?
let me see. Is this a late game? It's still 9.5.
Interesting. Okay. Are you going to play this one?
I think I actually already played it somewhere.
Okay.
Let me just find this one super quick. I don't. Is this? This is again the thing. Is this San Jose State's first conference road game? They've been on the road before.
Yeah, they played at
Well, they
Oregon State.
No, they actually were.
No,
Home to
they no
Oregon
they
State.
they were at yeah they sorry they're at USC.
They
Yeah, my bad.
at USC at Toledo. They were home to Air Force. Uh, at Boise State, but to be fair, Boise State's not that far from San Jose. It's not the furthest. It's a bit more north, but not like not the worst trip. I think you just got to travel over the entire state of Utah, which isn't that bad, but it's not nothing. But it's not.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
not like flying. It's not like getting to Laramie. I'll put it that
No,
way. You've got
no.
airport to airport. That's actually I've been right by San Jose State several times. It's not far from the airport. That's a nice airport too. If you're ever flying to the Bay Area, flying to San Jose, it's a very
Yeah.
nice, pleasant airport.
If you're ever flying to Canada, never go to Pearson Airport ever. It's horrible. Fly to Buffalo instead. I'm not joking.
Okay.
I went on trips last year, and like every airport, I'm like, why is this infinitely better than Toronto? Like literally every airport was infinitely better. Toronto is just horrendous. There is no food, nothing. It is massive lines. It's just horrendous. Just Buffalo is better. I've gone through O'Hare so many times. O'Hare's amazing, beautiful airport, and I don't even think it's like. I think people are like O'Hare's okay. I'm like, this airport is amazing compared to Toronto. So, but no, San Jose State. No, I actually do. I like San Jose State here. It is first non-conference road game, but they did go to USC. I just don't think Boise's that good. I just give me the 9.5 and give me a little bit on the money line there. I'm not putting a ton on this, but I kind of like I do like San Jose State here.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what this will be at kickoff too. I just got a feeling that this number is going to move away from Boise. Yeah, this next one doesn't surprise. I'm a little surprised that the market is. I don't know. Maybe they're looking at the fact that Georgia Tech beat Miami last season, but I mean, come on, man. That's just kind of unforgivable. Just what they did against Bowling Green. Now maybe there's they beat Miami last season, and maybe there's also the whole nothing makes sense at Georgia Tech where they lose stupid games and they win nice games. So maybe this is a nice game where they give a better effort, but this is a dual model play. I think I made a small one on this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was able to grab this on Sunday at 20.5, which I really, really like. So
nice.
I'm not liking this 20. I think it's 21.5, so I'm not touching that anymore. But I got in there, and I'm happy with that. Maybe a player prop here, maybe a Tyler Van Dyke over 1.5 passing touchdowns, because Georgia Tech does not seem to be able to stop anything on defense. So I do like this though. I feel like the market hasn't caught up with Miami. / the market is like. I think the market thinks Miami's good, but not like they've been just severely undercovered, and I think I worry that. I mean, here's the thing: our model, just because our model likes something, doesn't mean our model's not like infallible. So our model could be saying, "Oh, they're really, really good," but then at the same time, they're actually not that good. They've just been padding their stats basically against kind of worse teams. So then it could be a bubble waiting to pop. So I do worry about that a lot. So we'll see is what I'm saying. I think they're a good team, but they're going to have to travel to. They have to play North Carolina, and they have to travel to Florida State. So good luck with that. And the thing is, it's going to be so sad if like we find this edge on Florida, Miami this entire time, and then they go to Florida State and get crushed. And it's like, oh well, that just didn't exist. It was a mirage, right? So
Yeah. We disagree on this next one here. I've got the total here at 41, the projected total. Let me see. What is it? I think this number's come down from 50.
let me check.
I think it's closer to like 47 now. But this hits all the parameters. I know Alabama is the elite defense that makes this qualify. Let me see if
46.
Yeah, that seems a lot more realistic. Where is you? Yeah, so Alabama is an elite. Texas A&M isn't quite there, so you don't have both defenses qualifying. But Alabama is strong enough where that margin is, the last 2 seasons within these circumstances, this is over a 70% win rate by my model. So I'm glad I got it where it is. I think you said it's at 46 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a little too close. So I don't know if I'd bet it now, but I was happy I got it early. Kent State at Ohio State. I like this. Ohio, Kent State's offense is just horrible. Ohio sneakily, their defense is the strength of the team so far this season. We both have this going way under, so I made a full bet on that. Don't know if you've bet any totals yet. Grab this one.
No, it's 45. 45 now.
Okay, still 2 scores, which I think is significant.
45 and a half. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've grabbed this on a full unit play. You gonna grab this maybe?
I think I could. Yeah, it's 45 and a half, but the spread is like 26, so it's like Ohio beats them like 30-0, something like that.
Yeah, it's just one of these things where I think I don't know. After some bad luck last week, I'm not doing team totals anymore until I have a little more proof of concept. But I think that the market's probably giving Kent State too much credit for their ability to score on the road. I mean, they're just a horrible offense. They're bad all around, but especially their offense is just really inept. ODU, man, both our models are just secretly in love with ODU again here. Southern Miss is favored by 2.5. That's probably come down, I'm guessing. Yeah, looks like maybe 1.5 now. Excuse me. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's 1.5 now. Yeah.
Yeah. I grabbed ODU. I like that I have them much better. Southern Miss, their quarterback is on the bum list. I think from week 1, still solidly on there. Billy Wiles. Southern Miss is just a program that's without any direction. Will Hall, the coach, is a former offensive coordinator. Their offense is stunk. Their only strength was defense. Their defensive coordinator is now with your Gators. There's just not a lot to like on this team. Have you grabbed this one? I grabbed it for a full unit.
I'm going to debate that. That's also pretty good teaser fodder too. So
yeah,
but the thing is,
your model likes this more than mine.
Yeah, when I get something like that, though, I do worry about it, though. I worry that's like, because it's so far off of market consensus, I worry about the fact that you have that as plus 14. I like that as well, then.
You know what it might be, too, is that you're, and I don't have it either. Both our models exclude that crappy ODU game against Texas A&M Commerce because it was an FCS game. So we don't have it. So that's in the market that we don't have. But I think that there's probably, I'm guessing, a little bit too much of that in the market. Southern Miss just sucks,
cover against Marshall. They did cover against Marshall too.
Yeah. They actually jumped out to a big lead too. They're due to win. All right, Arkansas at Ole Miss. I actually had Ole Miss really favored here. You actually have Arkansas covering, so I'm not. Oh no, I'm take that back. I made a small play on this, but not a dual model play. I doubt that you're confident enough to take Arkansas on this spot. And their 1 point yards per rush.
No, I don't like it. I don't want to touch this. This is just a really it's just no, I'm not touching that. Maybe tease Ole Miss down, but I'm not a fan. I don't trust Arkansas, and I also don't particularly trust Ole Miss either. So I don't think I'm going to touch that.
Yeah, I'm always one to caution about just don't read too much into one game. But man, if you just look at Ole Miss versus Alabama and Ole Miss versus LSU, you kind of don't know what you're going to get. I mean, literally, it's not like there's a pattern of like, I know I'm going to get this and there's one aberration. I mean, that's just two different teams that we saw in those games. I don't know what the real middle is. And that's why I like my model is I don't have to do it. I can just let my model tell me what to expect. But your model's telling a little bit of a different story. So we'll see. I think probably, your model likes better. Your model favors great quarterbacks more than mine does.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, that's why you have USC 1 and I have USC like 33rd. There might be some of that built into here in KJ Jefferson. Okay. Lastly, you're on the different side of me than this. We talked about this in the market intelligence. I just can't see Wyoming scoring much in this game. Fresno State's too freaking good. I played a full unit on this right away. I'm curious what this number is now, by the way, too. Do you have that handy?
Let me see here. 45.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And you know what? The other thing I've noticed, just to kind of bury the lead at the end of the podcast, boy, there's a lot of late movement on totals too. Way more than the point spreads.
Yeah.
Way more. They'll move like 3. And granted, it's a different market if you're looking like a margin of victory versus total, but hey, a score is a score. There's a lot more movement. So I think that's why I can play totals longer in the season. So, just to remind everybody, so when you see the bolds, those are dual model plays. The other ones that aren't bolded are just my model plays, my plays that I've got. So do you have, since we've got the dual model plays, what do you like that's not a dual model play for the Robert plays?
Yeah. Let me do... let's find it here. So yeah, give me Oklahoma money line,
Yeah.
Oklahoma spread, Oklahoma money line. I like that.
What numbers are you seeing for that? Is it like 5.5
I've
on the spread?
got 6.5. I grabbed a 7 somewhere, but I'll take the 6.5. 6.5
Okay.
plus 215.
Okay.
I also like Maryland plus 20. That seems pretty crazy high against a team that's not bad at all. What else? Where was the other one here? Yeah, I hate to do this, but I feel like it's too many points. I don't love this one, but it's not a bad play. Give me Clemson. Wake Forest plus 21 against Clemson. I only have them as about 14-point favorites. This is kind of like 14.8. Again, that's not a money line play. That's too many points play. And then what was the other one here? And then give me Texas Tech at Baylor. Texas Tech, if you want to do, it's -1, -110 or -115 money line. They're functionally the same. I do the money line there, but if not, you're getting a push anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't see why Texas. I'll be playing the money line specifically because in my book, if a team goes up 17 for Bet365, if a team goes up 17, you get the cash out. Your bet is marked as a winner no matter what. So even it gives you an out. Like that has been really nice sometimes, even in some upsets too. So because there's been some times in games where I think it was there's been some times in games where it's like I have a massive underdog and then they win. They get up 17, but then the other team comes back, and then literally. But because it was a massive spread anyway, the spread's won. So literally they're playing in overtime. But I'm just I don't even care. It doesn't matter who wins this game because the spread's gonna cash, And the money line's already cashed too. So I'll play. I mean, I'll play that. But if you want to play the -1, go ahead. I don't see why Baylor is favorites, or I don't see why this isn't close. So
Okay. All right. And then lastly, wrong teams favored. We've hit on this a little bit. We mentioned Louisiana Tech and Tulsa. Didn't mention Purdue. We've both got them a straight up favorite. Last week, these plays went 1-1, but you got a 15% ROI because the one that did hit, I can't remember who it was. It was Virginia Tech. That was a plus 130. So we'll just track these separately too. And with that, we just look forward to the games. The podcast is over, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But football tomorrow. Q's action.
Football tomorrow. Q's action.
Yes.
I'm excited for this, actually. There's going to be some good games on weekdays now. I think I saw online there's now 50 straight days of either college or NFL football at night. So
I saw that tweet too. Yep.
Yep. So,
starting with Jacksonville State tomorrow. So,
yes.
Okay. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See ya.